Edward Bach was born in 1886 in Moseley, in UK, a small village near Birmingham. As a child, he was extremely thoughtful and observant, a real lover of nature and the world around him. He was very attentive to animals and plants, and in many ways had great sympathy for all the pain and suffering that both humans and animals and even plants can feel. When on vacation, he used to ramble around the meadows, woods, fields, and very often he did not return home but slept under the stars, because for him both flora and fauna were friends, subjects of observation and satisfaction, and he made long-standing games based on observation his own.
Des sujets d'observation et de contentement, et c'est des jeux permanents, toujours basés sur l'observation, qui vont être les siens.
He could spend hours observing some section of bank or moss. He nevertheless had a preordained destiny, which was to go into his dad's boiler-making business. But the one thing that interested him the most was to be a doctor, and so hopefully to be able to heal. Despite this, he went to work and frequented ordinary workers. He observed them in the same way he observed animals and plants, and he became aware of their worries, problems, and misfortunes. And this made him even more determined to become a doctor. One day, as factory sales rep, he went on a sales trip. He procured a great number of orders, and people were apparently happy to place orders with him. However, when he returned with his order book, none of the orders were profit-making because the price quoted was too low. Money did not interest Bach, and he eventually admitted to his father that his dream was to become a doctor. To his great surprise, his father totally agreed. So he studied medicine and was surprised that orthodox medicine did not bear much relationship to his preconceptions of what medicine would be like.
N'aura pas beaucoup de rapport avec ce qu'il a comme type d'intuition sur le plan médical.
As far as he was concerned, you should not concentrate too much on the disease, but rather on the state of mind of the patient. For him, the state of mind was the most critical thing. Knowing how the circumstances of the patient came about is something fundamental. So he had an interesting medical education. However, as he would later say, having obtained his diploma, the first thing that he was to do was forget everything he learned to enable him to eventually practice the medicine of his dreams, a kind of medicine that would facilitate treatment, focusing on the symptoms of the disease and not just the disease itself. In or around the year 1912 or 1930, he returned to the University Hospital of London as a pathologist and bacteriologist. The work schedules given to him did not suit, as they were set schedules, and he was someone who could work 21 hours a day, and not just the schedule 12. He therefore resigned and applied for a position in the Homeopathic Hospital of London. There, he read Samuel Hahnemann's book, The Organon. Samuel Hahnemann was the father of homeopathy, and he discovered that despite the century that separated them, he and Samuel Hahnemann espoused the same ideas. He was wholeheartedly devoted to homeopathy, found a formidable method of oral vaccination, and by developing these vaccines, he was able to inoculate and save tens of thousands of human lives.
Et en mettant au point ces vaccins, il va pouvoir vacciner des milliers de gens et sauver ainsi des dizaines de milliers de vies humaines.
In this period, Bach's fame started to grow. He published several works through the Royal Academy of Medicine, and these bring him some fame and fortune. And then, one day of July 1928, on a trip back to the scene of his childhood holidays in Wales, by the River Usk, he came across a magnificent plant, Himalayan balsam, for botanic Impatiens glandulifera. It swayed gently in the breeze. Bach was interested, got closer and realized that above the flower there were carpophores, fruit, and the flower had already borne seeds. He touched them and they exploded in his face, as if the flower had been irritated by being touched, and as if to defend itself from this attack. He immediately recalled the suffering of some of his patients that he had not managed to cure with homeopathy. Extremely interested in this parallel, he returned the next day with his homeopathic tools and made an homeopathic remedy from the seeds of his plants. He returned to London and gave it to his patients. What the morphine, the opium of that period, did not manage to do, this impatience remedy managed. Bach said to himself that the medical system he is thinking about may simply be found in nature. There was no need to go further than nature to find a whole range of flowers endowed with important medicinal properties, and maybe that with a gentle method we would be able to treat people. Over 2 years, he will return twice to banks of the Usk River, where he would conduct 2 trials with new flowers. One of them was to be the clematis, 2 months later, Impatiens, and the other one was to be the mimulus. These 3 flowers grow in the same area. Each one was to be tested over the course of the 2 years, between 1928 and 1930, by Dr Bach on a certain number of patients who suffered from a certain kind of state of mind. He noted possible links to balance disorders and the disease of his patients. Systematically, he found cures. Then, he decided to leave for the countryside, seeking a new medical system, convinced that it would be the medicine system of the future. Bach had just given up an extremely lucrative business, namely his Harley Street doctor's practice, and thus decided to live in search of a new system of healing and medicine based on floral remedies. He mainly walked through woods, meadows and fields in search of plants capable of treating personality disorders. He therefore needed to find a new method of production. He observed that morning dew on flowers in the sun seems to have properties and particular effects absent from the dew on flowers in the shade. How did he know that? In a very simple way. He is a rather sensitive man. He took out pipette, finds 2 or 3 dew drops that he put on his tongue, and effectively felt a significant difference between both. As far as he was concerned, the light, sun and heat which emanates from it is indispensable. Between 1928 and 1935, Bach was to discover 38 white flowers with which we have certainly affinities.